the kind of acceptance that happens that helps you get through whatever's going on. Where if you have some talk like, when you don't accept the situation, it shouldn't be like this. Anytime you say should, everyone should have a red flag because there's something going on there. But it shouldn't be
Yes.
like this. Da, 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 I don't want it to be like this. Da, da, da. You're not accepting how it is. That is not a pathway to a harmonious, great life. Where if you can accept and use acceptance as the key to happiness, whether it's menopause or whether it's your day job or whether it's driving the car, I think you'll find that you have a better life.
Welcome to All Things Menopausal. My name is Mary, and I'm a menopause doula. As a doula, we augment the healthcare profession as menopause support practitioners. I created this podcast, All Things Menopausal, to build community for women going through menopause transition and to foster resilience through the stories that connect, educate, and empower. These stories are real, raw, relatable, and they're very much relevant to the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual whole person that we are. In our midlife transition, we are not alone. Each week, you will hear from courageous, vulnerable, and knowledgeable guests sharing their passion, their journey, and lived experience. These are little clues to finding solutions to our unique situation. The menopause symptoms are personal, but the experience is universal. Today, I'm joined by John Merkus, host of the successful podcast Rise and Thrive, Conversations for Greatness. His podcast delves into insightful conversations with thought leaders, experts, and everyday individuals who have dared to chase their dreams and accomplish extraordinary feats. Each episode is designed to uplift, educate, and inspire, much like the goal of All Things Menopausal. A great, uplifting conversation we had indeed. Educational to hear from the male perspective of menopause and what it means, or rather what it takes, to show up in a supportive role for a spouse in the midlife transition. Sharing stories from a husband's point of view on menopause can foster empathy, understanding, and support within relationships, while also contributing to broader societal conversations about women's health and aging. Here's a little bit about John. John is one of the authorities on accelerated personal achievement. He is a compelling speaker on a broad range of motivational performance, health, and productivity subjects. His presentations illustrate the essential concepts behind greater performance, increased productivity, and excitement. Coupled with a flair for entertainment and a natural ability to communicate ideas clearly to his audience, John is impacting and inspiring leaders of organizations and individuals of all walks of life. In our conversation, we do touch on subjects such as motivational speaking, change management, menopause, and the power of music. John shares his personal experiences and insights in being a supportive spouse for his wife as she navigated through her menopausal journey, and how finding humor in challenging situations often is the key to staying motivated and inspired to be that support that women often require and desire of their husband. You can find John at johnmerkus.com. And you can find his podcast, Rise and Thrive, Conversations for Greatness, in just about any listening platform, including Apple and Spotify, as well as on YouTube. Sit back, enjoy. I think you're going to really find this motivating, entertaining, and very educational. Hello, John from Melbourne, Australia. Thank you for joining me today.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Mary.
So John's in the business of change leadership, and he's going to tell us all about motivational speaking and change management and for companies. And the woman, the CEO of her own company, that being her body, has got to be ready for change. Change leadership, it's all about how we can handle the changes of the season of our lives. And I want to hear John's perspective, not just for his leadership and motivational speaker, but because he's a husband too. So John, take it away. I've spoken too much.
No, it's fine. It's your show as much as you like. Firstly, I need to say straight off the bat, Mary, I have no idea what I'm talking about. And the reason I say that is because to really understand something, you need to experience it. So I just want to be clear to you and the listeners. I'm happy to give you the benefit of some of my experiences and my knowledge and all that. I'm an open book and wear my heart on my sleeve and all of that. But I'll never experience menopause. So I'll never really know what it's like. It's a bit like you don't know what tennis is like until you're on the court hitting the ball. And so I understand it's a part of the aging process. And I also know sometimes it's a challenge to embrace some of the things that happen to us as we get older. So I can certainly relate in that to that aspect of menopause. But yeah, I just wanted to make that point straight off the bat. So it was just clear. Makes me feel better about what I'm going to say as well.
Yeah. Well, I think our listeners are hooked already. It's like, yes, a man who's admitting finally that they don't know what the hell's going on in our bodies and our brains. And we love them for that. And,
Yeah, well,
you know,
the brain's the most complex object in the
yes.
known universe. So,
Yeah.
and I also like the premise of I don't know because it opens you up to possibility and understanding. Where if you close down and go, I know everything about this, there's not much you can tell me that I wouldn't know about whatever the topic is. It doesn't open you up to learning and understanding more. And probably like you, I think that's part of the reason that we're here. We're learning all the time, we're experiencing all the time, and it's a beautiful life.
Mm-hmm. And that it speaks a lot to the mindset which, portion, which you probably will speak about today, is just having that open mindset to welcome what's coming. Because when that resilience is already there, that barriers, you've already created resistance to the change, I feel. So just having that open mindset.
Yeah, and some of the principles that I've learned through my life, a bit of a personal development junkie, so to speak, is what you resist persists. You might have heard that saying before. So there's something about, I don't know what the magic is, but there's something about either tackling something head on or acknowledging something. There's that other expression, if you can name it, you can tame it. I like that as well. So if you can really understand, instead of avoiding it, tackle it, things seem to work out better.
Yeah, so true. So I always like to ask my guests when they come on the show, no matter what their field of expertise might be, their experience, lived experience, their knowledge, whatever they want to share, I always like to take it back to their backstory, who you are, what you do, and why you do it. So let's share with our listeners a little bit about John and his journey to where he is today as a very successful podcaster, too, I might add.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, I appreciate the question. And I sometimes joke and say, yeah, well, let's talk about my favorite subject, mate.
It's the easiest one we know, right?
Yeah, that's right. But all jokes aside, I, as a kid, I didn't like to read at all. In fact, if I had to read a book for school or anything like that, I really struggled and I didn't like it. It's because I was a slow reader. And it wasn't until I was in my adult years, kind of my late 20s and then 30s, that I started reading and I really started enjoying it. And I started to read some authors and some books in the spiritual realm that I hadn't been exposed to before, in the Buddhist realm as well. And it was really opened up my eyes and I just couldn't get enough. And I absolutely loved what I was reading and thinking and understanding because I'd never been taught any of these kind of principles at school. Now, I know school's different these days, and my kids, I've got a couple of kids, 14 and 10, they have mindfulness lessons and things like that at school. We didn't have
Incredible.
any of those. I'm a Gen Xer as well. So we didn't have any of those. So what I found was I felt really lucky that I was exposed to that and then sought that information, because at that time you really had to be a seeker of that information to be able to get it, because it wasn't kind of public domain and as accessible as it is today. And through that, there was a seminar series and several speakers coming to Melbourne, and it got me really excited because I could hear some of my favorite authors speak. And they were people like James and Sally Redfield, Deepak Chopra, Louise Hay. And that was just an amazing experience to see them live. And so I'm sitting in the arena. There's 15,000 people arena there. And I was looking down. I mean, we're getting goosebumps thinking about it again now. I was looking down thinking, that's me.
Oh,
For the first time, I really felt and understood and feeling it as the pertinent word there. I felt like this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
beautiful.
And not long after that, I wrote and delivered a seminar, my own seminar called Happiness and Empowerment, which I took all the things that I'd learned over the years into an event. And it was a bit of a smorgasbord. So I would talk about the things that I'd learned, and then people in the audience could pick what resonated with them. So maybe not everything would resonate that I spoke about, but I'm sure there were some principles in there that did. And then after I delivered that, I was still pretty young. When I look back now, I was pretty young at the time. I didn't think so. This was 1999. I was 30 years old,
Okay.
and then I think I almost got a little bit spooked by what I'd achieved because then I just sabotaged it all. And then I didn't continue with it and then went
Ah,
back to what I was doing in for a job. And then, pardon me, life happened and lots of different things. And I moved away and lived in Sydney for a while. And I found the woman of my dreams and been married for 15 years and got a couple of kids. And I'm very blessed to have a wonderful, loving family. And in the last 2 years, I'd say, kind of got back and found myself again and remembering that guy that was sitting in that audience going, that's me. And that's what I need to be doing with my life. So, for whatever reason, maybe I needed to have more experiences. I always, the mindset I like to take on is everything happens for a reason that it serves me. So, I don't look back with regret that I didn't continue on the path that I'd started. But it's certainly inspiring me now. And over the last 2 years, I've got back into it. And as you say, last year, I've started a podcast. And so it has really helped me realize my dream because my dream was to be an international speaker and author. And through my podcast, I've been listened to in over 15 countries around the world, and I do an episode every week. So I'm doing the speaking and being listened to all around the world. So
really?
it's quite amazing. And back then, when I started, podcasting wasn't even a thing. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't have had that opportunity to do it the way that I'm doing it now.
Mhm.
I absolutely love it. So I hope that answers your question, a bit of my background and
I
how it
think
all
it's
started and stuff like that.
I think it's a beautiful story, actually. It can resonate with everybody, males and females. And for my female listening audience too, is it's true. We get a taste of what we want, who we want to be. And one of the things I do as a menopause doula, when I work with a client in the coaching, is we do a visionary board. I want them to sit down and figure out their vision statement based on all the values. And sometimes they don't know until they're really put to the test and ask themselves, okay, where do I want to show up the rest of my life as they go through this transition? Those little snippets, some of those little inspirations from world-renowned speakers, like you had mentioned, we don't know until they touch us on our heart, and then we get a taste of it and we walk away. It's like the universe is saying, now you know how good it can be.
Yeah.
Go back there and get it. But you need that little taste almost before you can really truly step into that power, to that purpose, I think.
Yeah, and I think I'm lucky enough to have it. I don't know if everybody gets it, but where you're in a situation and you go, this feels so right, I need to do something more about this. So I'd encourage anyone listening, if you've ever had that feeling, explore it. And it doesn't necessarily have to become your vocation and your main source of income. It could just be something that you love to do that inspires you and that is a part of your life and makes your life great.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
think there's a
So,
lot of pressure. It's like, oh, do what you love and make a lot of
yeah,
money out of it. And I think that's great. But I do think that comes with a bit of pressure. So it can just be, something that you include in your life that makes you happy. And that's good enough.
yeah, so true. So we're going to go right into the meat and potatoes, if you will. We're going to ask John, the motivational speaker, how did he show up for his wife when she went through menopause. And what was the experience like? Were you there to encourage her like you do for the thousands of people that tune in and listen to you, or the guest audience that you've had live in an auditorium?
Yeah, well, I think it's going to sound a bit silly, right? But I, I think if you love your partner, it makes it a lot easier, right? So if you start with a lot of love between you, that helps a lot, because with that love, it means you want the best for that person, and it doesn't make it about you. And of course, we've all got egos. We all think about ourselves and want to have things great for ourselves. But if you're in a loving relationship with your partner, you also want the best for them. And sometimes that might mean putting yourself on the back seat for whatever reason, to be able to help your partner. I'll just keep saying, I'll say my wife now instead of partner, trying to be politically correct there.
Right.
So
I just don't know.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I have found difficult through all of my life in dealing with women is hormonal mood swings.
Mm,
And I think that's the same for a lot of guys. Like I said at the start, we don't understand because it doesn't happen to us in the same way, but we do understand in the way that we can experience the what happens in that environment. So I think one of the main things that helps is that when you understand that any kind of mood swings are not aimed at you,
mhm.
and not to take things too personally. And, getting back to some of the personal development principles that I've learned that have really helped me, sometimes it's a matter of being kind rather than being right. So you could be right about the fact and say, this is a bit out of line, or, whatever you want to, however you want to react. Or you could be kind and go, I don't really understand exactly what's happening here, but it seems like my partner needs some help or listening or some ice cream or whatever. And so, does it really matter in the scheme of things what particular thing happened? And there's a trying to put it into words, but I think you understand what I mean. That there's a bit of friction there because of some kind of mood.
Mhm.
Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm selfishly hoping that, by having you on my podcast, and then I say, hey, to my husband, Gavin, why don't you have a listen to this episode with John? Maybe you can share it with your friends so that all of their wives will thank me, because we've been able to hear it from the perspective of a man. And I had this conversation with my husband. I said, you should be a guest with me on the show, because he had brought up to me, I think what you're doing is absolutely wonderful, Mary. But like, nobody asks the guy's perspective. Nobody really wants to know how we're showing up in that space during menopause, and he
Yeah.
put it beautifully. My wife is going through menopause, but our marriage is going through it too. And you're right. After having that strong foundation, can we lean into it? Is it strong enough to get us through which can be the most tumultuous time in a woman's life?
Absolutely. And personally, from a guy's point of view, I sometimes struggle between, because I'm big on personal responsibility. So I struggle between someone taking responsibility for what's happening, and also on the other side of that, physical interactions that are happening that might lead that personal responsibility not available,
Right.
let's say. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Right.
it's easy to say, well, you've got to take responsibility for how you're feeling and what you're doing and work it out and do it. So, but then there's also the other side of the coin where, the hormones in your body and the things that are happening might be affecting you in a way that either you don't understand or you don't have a lot of control over. And it's not just as easy as saying, get over it,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean. So I think
And
that's a big one for the guys, because us guys are a bit like, shit happens, try and deal with it, we move on,
yeah.
right? And we can't take that attitude in dealing with menopausal women.
And that is some of that reaction is what's been so harmful and hurtful for women for generations, is that if I haven't felt it, I can't empathize with the situation that she's going through. And so, you know, we always say, and the great leaders of the world too, is just develop that compassion muscle. Try to step back, step into their shoes, be the observer rather than let the ego minds have its say, which, you know, sometimes unbeknownst to the male partner or the male doctor or the male supervisor at work, whomever, it can lead to the gaslighting, but it was never intended. It's just the cultural thing. Our upbringing is just that knee-jerk reaction. It's like, come on, here's a hill, get over it. I'm sure you've heard that one too, of all those wonderful sayings in the world. That one's famous around our house.
Yeah, right. Yeah. In
But it
Australia, I don't know
is.
if we say it around the world. They say take a spoonful of concrete and harden up.
Oh.
Which is, and that might work for some people, or mainly men, or that masculine energy, but I don't think it works for the feminine energy.
Yes.
It's interesting what you said about observing, and it's just because it's my latest episode with Lena Ross. She talks about observing the feelings rather than absorbing.
I know. I just started listening to that episode, by the way.
Oh, nice. And that really, really resonated with me. And I'm glad it has with you as well, because I think it's relevant here as well, where you can observe what's going on. And you don't necessarily have to absorb what's going on, but you can have that lens of compassion. And I think that's the key to all of this. And you said it quite rightly. If you're compassionate, you can really deal with anything in this area. And there was another thing I wanted to say about that as well. Oh, yeah, when we talk about these personal development principles, one of the biggest one I learned early is acceptance is the key to happiness. And it blew me away because it's so simple. It doesn't mean you need to heap on any emotion as to what's going on or whatnot. So you can accept a situation. You don't even have to like it, right? But if you can accept a situation, then there's a kind of acceptance that happens that helps you get through whatever's going on. Where if you have some talk like, when you don't accept the situation, it shouldn't be like this. Anytime you say everyone should have a red flag because there's something going on there. But it shouldn't be like this. I don't want it to be like this. You're not accepting how it is. That is not a pathway to harmonious, great life, where if you can accept and use acceptance as the key to happiness, I think you'll find, whether it's menopause or whether it's your day job or whether it's driving the car, I think you'll find that you have a better life.
Yes. Yeah. You know, that's a nice segue. And I normally ask this question towards the latter part of the interview, but you do bring up some good principles, which are in the book that you said is one of your favorites, that being peace is every step.
Yes.
And that a whole mindful principle. And actually, I'm going to let you take it away from there, because when you shared that book, what I like to do is, when I hear it from my guests.
Yeah, no problem. I agree. For those that can see, I've got it here, pieces every step. And I've got a bookshelf behind me, and I've just moved into this house 7 months ago. And I was finally able to get all my books out again and have them with me. So it's very exciting for me, because for the last 10 or 15 years in the house that we were in, just wasn't big enough, so they just sat in boxes in the garage. So I'm very happy that I've got all my wonderful books back with me and next to me, and even just sometimes looking at them, I get a nice feeling, remembering the time when I read, including all those books from the wonderful authors that we talked about earlier with the seminar that I went to. But this one, Pieces Every Step, but Thich Nhat Hanh, it was one of those books where it opened my eyes to principles that I hadn't learned before, or that when I did read about them felt right, but I'd never had it put in that way before. So one of the first parts in the book is that every day is a gift. And you might have heard of that before and things like that, but when you read that, every day when you wake up, you've got 24 more hours, or you can assume you've got 24 more. One day you won't,
Yeah.
but for most of them, let's say that you do it. So
Mhm.
every day is a gift. So if you go into that day with that kind of mindset, rather than, oh, Jesus, I've got to get up and, oh, God, I really could do with a couple of coffees before I can get going. And do I have to really go through the traffic today? Or all this kind of stuff. That for me doesn't help me be my best or help others around me be my best. So when I got the concept just so simply that every time you wake up, you've got another 24 hours and each day is a gift, that that opened my eyes and helped me get more into the present moment. And a lot of this book, as you would imagine, being called Pieces Every Step, a lot of this book is about being mindful and being in the present moment. And you kind of think that you should do that. And when you read a book like this, it really helps. And I did note a page in here because when I read this and I did it, it really helped me. It says, breathe in, I calm my body. Breathe out, I smile. Dwelling in the present moment, I know this is a wonderful moment. So simple, so easy to do. The breath, which is the start of life, it just changed my world. Because you do that, you breathe in and say to yourself, I calm my body, and breathe out and smile. And then that helps you really get into the present moment. Dwelling in the present moment, I know this is a wonderful moment because the present's all we have. And it really helps you get into the present moment just by doing that.
Mhm.
So I'm going on about it because it's simple, but it was a big revelation to me. What I find about these things, sometimes they are simple. They're not easy to do all the time, but they are simple, and the simple ones are the best.
Beautiful.
Different forms of meditations. I always thought you needed to get into the lotus position and all that kind of stuff and try not to think and all the things. Probably meditation isn't, but that's the idea in my mind I had of what meditation was. And then reading the book, it talks about you can do an eating meditation. And I've done this a few times and it is absolutely amazing. So you prepare your meal, and when you're eating it, you can eat it alone or with others, but you don't talk while you're eating it. And what you do is you'll have your knife and fork, and then you will take a bite of your meal. You put your knife and fork down, and you close your eyes, and you don't open them again until you finish that mouthful. And that's a way to meditate while you're eating food. And because you are shutting off your sensory perception of sight, it really enhances the flavors because you're not being stimulated by other things and your brain's not trying to process all the things that it can see around you. That will be one of the tastiest meals you've ever had in your life. So you can have beans
Lovely.
on toast and you can do that and you'll go, oh my God, that is the best beans and toast I've ever had in my life. And it does also highlight the fact that, we eat as human beings because we need to sustain our life. But if you can do it mindfully like that, which is so simple, just put your knife and fork down on every bite, close your eyes on every bite, and don't open them again until you're ready to take the next one. That's a mind blowing exercise that you can do that's so simple. So, that kind of meditation was really interesting to be exposed to. Walking meditation, as he talks about in the book as well, which I love. Often when I go for a walk, I'll repeat something to myself as I'm walking over and over. And I call it my success and confidence walk because I repeat those words over and over, and it makes you feel so good as you're doing it. So there's some of the things that I learned through reading a book like this that were game changers for me. And this book, I think, came out in the early 90s. It was one of those ones that I read to start my journey. And when you ask me what's a book or the book that has impacted you the most, I looked at the books behind me because I've got heaps of favorites
Mm,
in there, but this stood out as the one I think that had the biggest impact on my life.
beautiful. And it's timeless because all the
Yeah.
principles that are in there, you stand the test of time. They're not predicated by anything that's happening in our world economy or our world politics. It's just very sage advice spoken from a true, I don't even know how to describe the brilliance of his mind, but it's incredible. And I read some of his other books, and let me just say they have taken me out of some moments of great despair too. It's just, yes, let's just simplify things, break it down, and shut that ego mind up, and let's just really get back to some really basic principles of humanity. So I'm glad that you share that, because there's so many little snippets of advice in that book that are very impactful. And that mindfulness thing, which is one of the key things I like to focus on when women are going through the menopause, is that, and this is what I liked about that part when he does speak about, don't try to sugarcoat, if you will, the bad stuff. Recognize that this is despair. This is an emotion that's not a pleasant one, but acknowledge it and accept it, because by burying it down further and further, you're causing more harm in the end. So it's more helpful and healthy for us to acknowledge what is happening. And that brings it right back to what we experience with the menopausal women as well. And as you said, as her husband,
I couldn't agree more. And maybe for your listeners, that is a book that really can help them through the stage of life that they're going through, because there's so much gold in there that, you know, whatever stage of life you're going through, it's a great book to expose yourself to or to read. But yeah, maybe for your listeners, even more so with some of the things in there, because they're so simple and they're free.
Exactly.
It doesn't cost it. Well, it costs you a bit of time, but not a lot of time to say a four sentence piece of writing and breathe in and out to help you get into the present moment and feel good. So, you know, worth it.
Or what Deepak Chopra says all the time is, take a moment to go inward to that piece and just connect with the breath, the inflow and the outflow of the inhale and the exhale. Oh, yeah, there it is, that grounding. Okay, welcome home.
Yeah, and it's life. It's life. Breathing is life, and it's so taken for granted. And you know, I take it for granted too. You know, that's why it's so special when you don't, or when you read a book like that, or when you have a conversation like we're having, Mary, and it brings it back to the forefront of your mind, and you go, yeah, that's right. And so that helps us. It's a bit like motivation, right? I say motivation is like showering. You don't have one shower in your life and say I'm clean. And it's the same with motivation and books like this and things like that. You don't just read one book one time and then you're done. It's that constant exposure, and that's why I love podcasts like your podcast, like the things that we do, and like the books that we're talking about, because they're our kind of showers in a way where we get what we need.
Oh, so beautifully said. Yes, exactly. It's not a fire and forget scenario at all. Constant work. Work. Yeah. It's just fighting the ego mind daily is constant work. But with meditation, as you said, you do get better at it. You become the master of your fate and the captain of your soul, as they say, right?
I like it.
Another great quote. So now, and we're flip-flopping all over the place, but I love it. That's what you do with the menopause brain, is you're just all over the place and you just roll with it. But when it came back to supporting your beautiful wife when she was going through that, Victoria?
Renee.
Oh, sorry, my apologies, Renee.
No, that's okay. I live in Victoria, the state, so that's where I might have been the confusion. But yeah, Renee, my wife.
See, that's what happens. Menopause brain. Words confused all the time. We just roll with it.
Yeah.
So Renee, supporting your beautiful wife, Renee. Did you find that you could lean into some of those universal principles of as a motivational speaker? As you already said, you had to recognize that it wasn't just, you can't say all those statements and you think that they're right, but what were some of the special things from your experience that you found worked that you would want to implement on other men, other husbands, for their partners' wives?
Yeah, I think listening is a big one without trying to solve, probably because we don't have the answers anyway. So as guys, unless you're a physician or you're medically trained in this area.
Exactly.
So
and there's a difference right there.
Yeah. Listening and understanding. So, and also it helps to either from your partner or from a third party source, get a little bit of information on what's going on. So with information, there's power and power to understand and to be and to do. So when I am a light sleeper, and my wife started constantly moving around at night because she was hot, warm, and so she would, be taking sheets off and doing this and moving around and not comfortable, and I'll be awake, and then I'm not really dealing that well if I don't have a lot of sleep, and so that was a big effect on us and the family, because then she's experienced what she's experiencing. I'm not having as much sleep as what I would like. I don't operate at my best if I'm like that, but I do have
Mhm.
the awareness that that's happened, so I can try and rise above that. But sometimes, that doesn't always happen as well. So we just had to talk about the fact that this is happening. She doesn't want it to happen, and we've just got to kind of go through it. So sometimes you just got to hold hands and just go, get on the ship and bob around the ocean and go. There's
Yeah.
nothing to do. There's nothing to fix. It's just
Yeah.
that's how it is. Gets a little bit back to the acceptance is the key. And there was times though where Renee would sleep on the couch if it was getting too much. So she would recognize and go, I can't sleep. I'm really restless. I'll go and sleep somewhere else so John can have a good sleep. So that was really nice of her to do that and have that empathy for me as well. So that was really nice. So that might not be easy, but I just wanted to mention that because I thought that was something that some action that she took,
Beautiful.
understanding the impact that what she was going through was having and did.
Yeah.
And that also made it easier for me to be able to support her as well. So I could support
Beautiful.
her better if I'm not awake all night because of all the
Yeah.
tossing and turning. And I know women experience the hot flushes, and that's the major one we probably all know of the symptoms that happens. And so just to make it a little bit lighter, our heating bill went down.
I mean, you've been freezing cold, but she's just right.
Yeah, well, prior to that, she was always turning the heating up, and I was going, "Oh, come on, do we have to have it that hot?" And then
Yeah.
menopause came along, and then that situation um, didn't happen anymore. So there are some funny, interesting things that happen along the way as well. It's not all.
And if you can laugh at them, even healthier to the relationship, and you just learn and grow together. Yeah.
That's a really good point you make,
Beautiful.
Mary, because we all have a tendency to make things heavy. And I've got this mantra. I did this personal development course many years ago, and I discovered that one of the mantras that I need to say to myself is lighten up, John.
Mm.
So I'm not taking things really too seriously. Like there's times in your life where you've got to take things seriously. I understand that. But often we have all these thoughts and we need to just lighten up instead of beating ourselves up or not being where you think you should be, or "Oh, I should be able to handle this better than it's that should word again. Every time you say should, it's a red flag. But so it's like lighten up, just lighten up. And sometimes I'll say that to myself and force myself to laugh, and it makes me feel better as well. So I don't know if that can help any guys out there that are dealing with a partner that's going through menopause. And there are some heavy moments, I understand, but it doesn't always have to be heavy. And laughing, like you mentioned, and having a sense of humor about it helps a lot. And if you can say to yourself, lighten up and have a bit of a laugh, that helps immensely get through life. That's I love comedy because
Yeah.
it helps people get through. And some of the topics that comedians raise are pretty heavy, but they do it in such a way where you end up laughing at it or laughing at yourself. And personally, I've just found it works for me in a good way to go through life.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, definitely if you cannot laugh at this menopause, and there's honestly, I believe that there's something seriously wrong. It is a tough subject, but there is always humor in everything. And if you can dig deep enough to allow yourself to have those chuckles, whether it's with your colleagues at work, females or males. We've
Mm.
got a few in my corporate office where I work, we tend to just have these random discussions about what's going on with our symptoms, and we all have a good laugh. And it's healthy, it's happy, it makes going to work a little bit more palatable, if you will. But I got a real wild question for you. as a motivational
Okay.
speaker. Let's just say that John is hired to say, we want you to come in and be a motivational speaker for an organization that's trying to implement new policies for change. And those policies are on menopause support or menopause champions workplace training. And let's just say that is the assignment you've been given.
Yeah.
So how would you kind of like quickly structure your motivation talk for
I think
presenting?
what I would do in that area is maybe be the host of a panel of experts.
Oh, okay.
Because a bit like we said at the start, it's like I've experienced from the man's point of view, but I really think we need this panel of experts and then ask the questions of those
Beautiful.
experts to draw out. So I think that's probably how I would tackle that one. And the thing about change is that it evokes emotion. So
Right.
acknowledging that it does that and then helping people through those emotions, that's part of what I do for a job. And that's part of what I believe is a good way to describe the change that's happening in menopausal women. There's change happening. It evokes emotions, some more controllable than others, and those emotions need to be acknowledged, managed, and some understanding of where they're coming from, how to deal with them, what works, what doesn't work. Try a few things that might work for Mary, but it doesn't work for Alice. But at least Mary and Alice can share their ideas and you've got some support there and things like that. So in terms of change, I think sometimes the principles remain the same regardless of what the change is, because human beings, we're not wired for change. So we're wired for, if something's working and we're surviving, keep doing that.
Right.
And so change is a bit of a threat to that. It's like, oh, but this is working and I'm alive, and now this change has happened and that's a bit of a threat. And so sometimes we respond unconsciously to that threat because our brain is mainly geared to survival of the species.
Absolutely.
And anything that might challenge that, we don't like. And sometimes things are perceived as a challenge to our survival, but it's actually not. And we've developed socially greater than what our primal brain has. So it still thinks that we might be getting attacked by a saber-toothed tiger or something, but we're actually just being cut off in traffic. So so there's that balance in that where those two things meet, and that's where the awareness comes in. It's like, oh, maybe I'm reacting like this is observing rather than absorbing. Maybe I'm reacting like this because my brain thinks this is a threat, but it's not actually really a threat. It's just something I've just got to work through, and now I have an emotion about it that I've acknowledged and can work through. Now, everything I'm saying is very logical, right? And I know life doesn't always work out that way. So I've just got to keep going back to that as well. There's a lot of theory in what I'm saying. And a lot of the time, if you can be this way, it works. And that's the challenge of being a human being, is that we're not perfect and that we are constantly working through these kind of things. And that helps us grow and evolve.
Beautiful. Ah, it was so beautifully said, John. It's so true. Yes. And I've said this before in other episodes, the real science of the menopausal brain too, and what the brain is actually telling the rest of the body. It's just new data coming out, the brains and the hormones. And the brain's job is to protect. And so in any perceived threat, and the stress of the hormone could be just like the saber-toothed tiger all over again, because those cortisol levels rise and we immediately react. Brings back to the breath. Just pause and breathe in, and that's the luxury we have as human beings, is we can take that pause, 2, 3, breathe, and then reassess.
Yeah, and get into the present moment where life really is at its best, and those perceived threats or fears can kind of dissipate if you're in the present moment. I worked with someone once, and they had a really interesting saying that stuck with me, and I've used it plenty of times, especially if there's a bit of stress in the workplace. I'll say, if no one's dying and no one's going to jail, it's all okay.
True.
And it is.
So true. We look at some of those reports we have to hand in or products we have to produce at work, and we think nations are going to die if I don't get this right. That's the way we react. And it's a good stressor in a way. It motivates us to do a good job. But we have to cap it at a certain point where it's to our detriment. Right.
That's the point, Mary. You raise really well. When it becomes to our detriment, then we have to pull back and say, anyone going to die? No. Anyone going to jail? No. Oh, that's okay. I can get on with it from that perspective or from that frame now, because up until I just pulled myself up, I thought this was a life or death situation kind of in my mind, whether it is, not in the physical. But yeah, I guess that comes to being mindful and having a bit of a tool bag of things that you can use in the circumstances that you find yourself in, where these books that we've been talking about and some of these concepts really help. So it's been a surprise to me in a way that, and when I was doing some of the research before coming on, or the preparation, I should say, that was like, oh yeah, well, we can talk about all these wonderful personal development principles for this, because it translates beautifully.
Yes, that's exactly how I felt, actually. The more I looked at it, so this is all about personal development. No matter what you are going through, change is a change biologically, change societal measures. It's all about how do we manage that as that change management principles. So see, it wasn't life or death for you, John. You actually showed up and you leaned into those principles and you talked about it beautifully. Mastered it. I really would, I was like you. It's like, where could this go? We'll just take it anywhere, because that's what the beauty of podcasting is all about. It's real, it's raw, it's relatable, and we just have conversation and we share.
Yeah, that's it. We could be having a conversation over a cup of tea and talking about exactly the same things. And I'm with you. So I absolutely love about it. And I love these kind of conversations because, like we said before, it keeps it top of mind, or keeps you aware of these kind of things, where you don't have those conversations or listen to those conversations in a podcast. It might be a distant memory from 5 years ago where you heard, oh yeah, I should be in the present moment. But then you hear a podcast and we're talking about being in the present moment and some actions you can take to help you get in the present moment. You think, yes, I remember. Yes, I like that. I can do that because you heard it today. I like it.
Yes, I know. That's the beautiful thing. Time and space doesn't exist in the podcasting world either. So you could be listening to an episode that was recorded months, even years ago. But there's something about the universe. I truly believe in this, and probably you too. You put that energy out there. The universe, it takes it some time, but it comes back at a moment when we don't think we need it, but that message is loud and clear. Maybe the way that the book showed up on your bookshelf and you said, yeah, this is the one I really want to bring out today. Because you don't even realize that there are going to be people out there who are going to hear something that you shared because of that book. Bingo. I just needed to hear that this particular time and space.
That's happened to me as well, and I'm sure to you as well in podcasting, where a listener has come up or has messaged you or emailed you and said, when you said this, it really helped me and I really needed it at that point in my life. And as an example, I use music because I love music and I never thought I could play guitar. And then in my late 30s, I started playing and I can play a little bit. And I talk about the power of music to up your mood, to feel better. Makes sense. And I've got a playlist that I use at those moments where I feel like I need a bit of a boost. And I put that on. And this lady, Emily, said to me, that's such a simple idea that I never thought to do. So now I have my own motivational playlist that I use whenever I need an uplift. And I want to thank you very much for that. And I thought, how cool. Thanks. Yeah, no worries. Like, to me, it just makes sense. Use music to elevate your well-being. And through that tip, and she must have needed to hear that at the time. So probably talking about it now for a reason. So if any of your listeners want to make a playlist of songs that you really resonate with, that ups your mood, and play it in those times where you go, yeah, I really, really think I need a bit of a boost. Now, a lot of people know that and do that. this particular person didn't, and thought it was a great idea.
Okay, listeners, it's your challenge. Everybody's got to go out there and make their menopause motivation playlist. And then you have to share it in share in the comments. Write a review. No, by the way, Def Leppard, rock on. I guess that'd be AC/DC for you guys.
Bit of AC/DC never goes astray. Yeah, anything with a great beat that uplifts, Eye of the Tiger. It's a bit of a classic one, but I love it, especially when you hear the start of it. It's like, yeah, and maybe it's our generation, I'm not sure, but that's definitely one that's in my playlist. And sometimes because I've got my guitar in the office here, I found that, and if there's anyone that has played a bit of guitar that isn't playing at the moment, the number one thing to do is have it near you. So get it out of that case, have it near you. Mine's about 3 feet away from me. I see it every day. And when I pick it up, I start to sing, it forces you to breathe. And then you have the vibration in the music, and then you're feeling so many things are going on because of the vibrations, the music, the memories, the breathing. And I always find after I've played guitar, I feel great. And I might only play for 2 minutes because, that's just the time that I have. And I see it and I go, yeah, I'll do it. Because I know I'll feel better after I've done it. And it's got to do with all those things, but I reckon especially the breathing as well.
See, John, I picked up on that energy of yours. My husband plays guitar too. Just knew it. There's some similarities. Now I know why. You both have a beautiful appreciation for music and creating it yourselves with a guitar. My husband plays as well. And he says the same thing after, why don't I just pick up the damn thing more often? That's it. Yeah. He has it right in the living room, right next to right next to the couch. He walks by it every day, picks it up, and it's beautiful. It's great. And he's happy. And then if he's happy, I'm happy because he's nice to me, because I'm a bitch to him. And we'll all go back down that old conversation again, which we don't need to. We've already discussed that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. This has been so much fun, John. I really enjoyed having you on the show, sharing your perspective.
An absolute pleasure, Mary. I was honored to be invited. Thanks for having me on.
I've thoroughly enjoyed it. We'll probably bring you back. You know that, right? You do a good job. I always bring you back.
I'm happy.
Well, maybe we'll bring Renee back. We'll say, well, actually.
Hey, there's a good idea. There's a good idea. Yeah.
Absolutely would love to have her.
She's an amazing woman. Actually, I'm interviewing her this month for my podcast, Conversations for Greatness, because she is a sales executive in the IT world, and there's not a lot of women. And I think she'd be a wonderful guest for you as well as for me, because she's had to do and think things to have a great career.
Wonderful. Before we close, please tell our listeners where they can find you, what you're up to, what your handle is, and I'll share those in the show notes as well.
Thank you so much. So Instagram handle is J Merkus, Merkus, and I have a podcast called Rise and Thrive Conversations for Greatness, where I have chats like this, and it's all about uplifting, educating, inspiring, so people can thrive in their everyday life. And I also created it, not only does it help fulfill my dreams, it helps me stay in the conversation, but also too, I think it's really important that people you hang around with and the things that you expose yourself to. And so this podcast, Conversations for Greatness, is designed to be one of those things that inspire and uplift you and be part of the community that you hang around with. A little bit like this as well. So I'm loving it. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to plug it.
Yeah, thank you for saying yes. I thoroughly enjoyed this too. The podcasting world has been really delightful, and I'm glad that our paths crossed because of it.
Me too, and I hope they will again.
Absolutely.
I think the big takeaway is the importance of sharing a husband's point of view on menopause and why it is so important. Menopause can be a challenging time for both partners, but often husbands may not fully understand what their wives are going through. So hearing stories from other men about their experiences can increase understanding and empathy, fostering better communication and support within the relationship. Menopause is a natural part of life, but it can come with physical and emotional symptoms that may be unfamiliar or difficult to deal with. So sharing stories from the husbands who have gone through this experience can help normalize it and reduce feelings of isolation and abnormality. Menopause symptoms can be dismissed or downplayed, both by the women experiencing them and by those around them, including sometimes their own doctor. So hearing husbands share their experiences validates the reality of these symptoms and the impact they can have on the relationship and on daily life. And husbands sharing their experiences can offer practical tips and strategies for supporting their wives through menopause. This could include how to communicate effectively and how to maintain intimacy during the transitional period. Menopause is still a topic surrounded by taboo and stigma in many cultures. By openly discussing experiences, husbands can help break down these barriers and contribute to a more open and supportive society where menopause is understood and accepted as a normal part of life. Do you need support through your menopause transition? A menopause doula can help. You can find me at mlcoaching.com. And help me help you by filling out a simple survey, which is linked in the show notes. Your input is greatly valued and will help in the design and creation of tools, courses, and other resources for my upcoming one-on-one and group coaching programs. Take the survey, it's linked in the show notes. Like, follow, share, subscribe. And if you are enjoying this podcast, I would love to hear from you. Consider leaving a review. Spreading the word will help broaden my audience reach and further impact more women as they experience a transition.